There is a very specific and deeply uncomfortable reason why economists are terrible at calling recessions in real time. It's not because they're incompetent. It's not because the data is unclear. It's because of how a recession is officially defined. In the United States, a recession is declared by a body called the National Bureau of Economic Research, the NBR. And the NBR does not declare a recession while it's happening. They declare it months, sometimes over a year, after it has already begun, after they've collected enough data, after they've done enough analysis, after the thing they're announcing has already done most of its damage. The 2008 recession officially started in December 2007. The NBER announced it in December 2008. 12 months later, while millions of Americans had already lost their jobs, their homes, and their retirement savings, the 2001 recession started in March 2001. The NBR confirmed it in November 2001, 8 months after the fact. So here is the actual practical reality of how recessions work. By the time someone official stands up and says the word, you've already been living in it. The announcement is a history lesson, not a warning. And that's why the question everyone is asking right now, is a recession coming, is probably the wrong question. The right question is, are we already in one? And the answer, depending on which data you look at and who you are in this economy, is increasingly yes. Let's start with the indicator that should make everyone stop and pay attention. There is a tool called the Vacancy-to-Claims Indicator, the WCI. It's a labor market measure that tracks how quickly unemployment is rising relative to the broader workforce. And according to Mark Zandi, one of the most respected economists in America and the chief economist at Moody's Analytics, the WCI has just triggered his exact words. It has nailed every recession since World War II without falsely predicting a downturn. Every single one. No false alarms. And it just went off. Now, Zandi is careful about what he says next. He doesn't say we're definitely in a recession. He says the indicator is triggered, the signal is real, and that the strong March jobs number that everyone celebrated, 178, zoos and jobs added, should not be taken at face value because February was terrible. And March's numbers haven't yet captured the full economic damage from the Iran war and the oil shock that started on February 28th. That data is still working its way through the system. Don't take solace in the big March payroll employment gain, he wrote, because the indicator that has never been wrong in 80 years of economic history is already flashing red. But here's where it gets more nuanced, and this is the part I want you to really stay for, because the recession debate is missing something fundamental. There's a theory that's been gaining traction among economists for the last several years. It's called the rolling recession. And it explains something that feels deeply counterintuitive, how the economy can be in recession for some people while appearing completely fine in the aggregate data. Here's the concept. In a traditional recession, everything falls at once. GDP contracts, jobs disappear across every sector, consumer spending collapses broadly. The entire economy moves in one direction at the same time. But a rolling recession is different. Different sectors take turns contracting, while others boom in a rolling wave that never quite tips the overall economy into the official negative GDP territory that triggers the formal definition. And this is exactly what has been happening in America for the past 3 years. In 2022, tech was in recession, layoffs, hiring freezes, valuations collapsing while manufacturing was booming and energy was surging. In 2023, the housing market was in a deep freeze while AI investment was exploding. In 2024, manufacturing contracted while semiconductors ran white hot. In 2025, retail and financial services were shrinking while energy and AI infrastructure were expanding. As economists put it, if you're in high tech, Your recession happened 3 years ago, and right now the rolling wave is hitting the consumer. Because the most important and under-discussed number in the entire economy right now is this one. The top 10% of American earners by income now generate nearly half of all consumer spending in the United States. Nearly half consumer spending is 70% of GDP, which means the entire foundation of the American economy is increasingly being held up by the spending of 10% of the population, while the other 90%, particularly the bottom half, are quietly, invisibly, already in recession. Moody's Analytics puts the probability of a formal US recession at 48.6%. Goldman Sachs has it at 30%. EY Parthenon at 40%. Those numbers have roughly doubled from where they were before the Iran war started on February 28th. But probabilities don't tell you whether the recession is already here for the people who are already feeling it. And the data suggests it is. Credit card delinquencies are rising. Consumer confidence has declined for 3 consecutive quarters entering 2026. The bottom half of the income distribution is cutting spending not because they want to, but because after years of inflation, high interest rates, and stagnant wage growth, there is simply nothing left to cut. Unemployment for workers between 16 and 24 years old has been above 10% and rising for 6 months. The share of workers unemployed for 6 months or more is tied with the pre-2009 record. These are not the statistics of an economy that's fine. They are the statistics of an economy that is in recession for the people who have the least cushion to absorb it. And now add the oil shock. The Iran war that started February 28th has done something very specific to the recession calculus. It has taken an economy that was already fragile and applied heat to the exact pressure points that were already most stressed. Higher oil prices mean higher transport costs, which mean higher prices for everything. Higher prices mean the Fed cannot cut rates. The Fed not cutting rates means mortgage rates stay at 6.5%. Mortgage rates at 6.5% mean the housing market stays frozen. A frozen housing market means less construction, less spending on furniture and appliances and renovation, less economic activity. And less activity means slower growth on top of an economy that was already slowing. This is not one shock. It's multiple shocks compounding on top of each other simultaneously. And the Buffett indicator, the ratio of total stock market value to GDP, is currently sitting at 213%, the highest it has been since the last major market correction. Meaning stocks are priced for a healthy, growing economy at the exact moment when the underlying economy is showing multiple signs of contraction. That gap between what markets are pricing and what the economy is actually doing is where the danger lives. Because one of those two things has to adjust. Either the economy recovers to justify stock prices, or stock prices fall to reflect what the economy is actually doing. And right now, the economy has a 50-50 shot at a formal recession. A labor indicator that has never been wrong, flashing red. An oil shock still working its way through supply chains. Food prices set to spike in 6 months. And mortgage rates that have erased 30% of the affordability improvements buyers spent all of 2025 waiting for. Now, there's a scenario where none of this tips over. The Strait of Hormuz reopens quickly. Oil prices fall back, the Fed gets back on track with rate cuts, consumer confidence stabilizes. The rolling recession continues rolling, hitting sectors without ever quite hitting the aggregate number that triggers the official declaration. That scenario is possible. Poly market, the prediction market where people bet real money on outcomes, currently prices about a 31.5% chance of an official US recession by end of 2026, which means the market, even with all of this, still thinks it's more likely we avoid the formal definition than hit it. But here's the thing about the formal definition. It doesn't really matter what the NBR decides 12 months from now. What matters is what happens to your income, your job, your mortgage, your grocery bill, and your savings account over the next 12 months. And for the bottom half of the American income distribution, the people without stock portfolios cushioning the blow, without savings absorbing the shocks, without the flexibility to work from home and insulate themselves from a weakening labor market, the recession is not a future event they're waiting for. It's the thing they've been living in for a while. The NBR just hasn't confirmed it yet. History doesn't declare recessions in advance. It confirms them in the rearview mirror, and by the time the confirmation arrives, the people who needed to know earliest are always the ones who found out last. So here's where I want to hear from you. Do you think A, we're already in a recession and the data is just lagging behind reality? The rolling recession means we technically avoid a formal downturn, but it feels just as bad for most people anyway. Or C, the economy is more resilient than the bears think, and we pull through without a formal recession. Drop your answer in the comments, because Moody's has it at 48.6%, Goldman has it at 30%, and I genuinely want to know where this audience lands.